This £260 Topper Switch keyboard is supposedly made for programmers, hence the happy hacking keyboard name. But for the life of me, I just can't figure out who this is actually for. Let me explain why. But first, if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Now, I should preface this whole video by saying that most of my problems with this keyboard come down to personal preference. Although saying that, the price tag is pretty exorbitant no matter how you look at it. But to give you some context, I use a Coolmaster Master Keys Pro L with cherry brown switches, and that's my personal preference. So what's the deal then? Well, let me show you the layout and I think you'll understand. Now, this is a 60% or so keyboard, which means that it's missing a lot of the normal keys that you'd find on a full-size keyboard, thanks to its, well, size. It's missing the number pad, it's missing your arrow keys, as well as your home, delete, end, that kind of thing. And also missing the function row. All of those are embedded into different keys on the keyboard by pressing the FN button instead. Now, all of that is pretty normal for a keyboard of this size, but what's not normal is that there is actual physical keys missing. If you take a look at where the left and right control buttons would normally be, they're inexplicably gone in favor of apparently a useless blank space. Not really sure why. Control, at least the left one, has been moved to where caps lock would normally be, with caps lock being moved to FN and tab instead. You also don't have a backspace key in favor of a delete key that, again, you can press FN and delete to access backspace, and even the OS and Alt keys have been swapped around on both sides. Oh, and there's no arrow keys either. All of those are built into pressing FN and these 4 keys if you want to use them. Now, there is one saving grace here. There is a small panel on the back that when you remove the cover, you can see 6 tiny little dip switches. Those dip switches let you customize the layout of the keyboard depending on what you want to do. You can have a look at the sticker to see which one's which, but mainly the main customizations I made was switching the delete key to be backspace by default, and it's FN and backspace or FN delete to actually delete, and also swapping the Windows and Alt keys around so that they're in a more normal, natural position for me. Now, I'm not entirely sure why I would prefer having these absolutely tiny and actually very hard to flick dip switches, since there's pretty much no clearance around the hole that they're in, so very difficult to switch, but having those as opposed to a bit of software that would say, let me customize any key on the keyboard and just save that profile onto the keyboard itself, so that if I did want to take it with me with, not the same computer, then it would all still stay the same layout. And I mentioned that the switching or the changes tended to be a little hit or miss for me. Sometimes I would flick the switch and the change would happen immediately, and sometimes I'd flick the switch and then I'd have to disconnect and reconnect the keyboard multiple times, or even flick other switches to get the first change to come into effect. Now, of course, funky layout keyboards aren't new, but normally the changes that they make serve a purpose. With the Expos keyboard I reviewed a little while ago, all of those changes were made in the name of ergonomics. With the Keychron K2, that was all made in the name of style and options for Mac versus Windows. But with this one, I'm really not sure. I've read that supposedly this is for people who spend all of their day in Emacs or a Unix terminal, which I actually asked a friend who's a full-time programmer and who spends a lot of time in Emacs, and he said that it seemed all a bit pointless. And then there's the switches. Now, I put switches in air quotes there because these are Topper switches, which are just rubber domes with a conical spring underneath. Now, I should mention though that when I took the keyboard apart to show you those switches, I actually had to break a warranty void if removed sticker, which doesn't really make sense for a keyboard that's called customizable and hacking, right? It's also illegal, at least in the USA, so good job there, guys. But the long story short is that in theory you can customize the keyboard by opening it up and voiding a warranty, and by replacing those switches and rubber domes to change the typing feel. But as someone who's had a lot of experience with mechanical keyboards, you can't quite see it, but I have a lot directly above me, from OG cherry switches to the clones and knockoffs to even the Romer G switches from Logitech. This just doesn't feel very nice to type on for me. It feels an awful lot like those old rubber dome keyboards I had when I was at school, crossed with the sound of a fairly cheap and naff mechanical keyboard. Have a listen. Of course, being a rubber dome means that you almost have to fully bottom out the key to get it to actuate, something that I quite enjoy not having to do on a normal mechanical keyboard. And even forgetting the layout, the typing experience on it just doesn't feel great, and I actually gave it to my developer friend who said the same thing. He didn't like it either. For this much money, I'm not sure why this type of key switch would be actively desirable. I even spoke to a different full-time developer who said he much prefers his Keychron K2, and honestly I can't blame him. The K2 is almost exactly the same size, especially if you take into account the hybrid's rather interesting AA battery placement, which looks an awful lot like one of those old Dell laptops with the extended life batteries hanging out the back. Also, the K2 is almost a third of the price of the hybrid. It also uses proper mechanical switches and even comes with Mac and Windows keys in the box so you can customize it to your system. Oh, and this comes with a USB cable in the box. Apparently that's a novel concept because for £260 you don't get one with the hybrid. Oh, and this is also wireless still, but also has much nicer switchgear to do it with. It's also backlit, which makes it way easier to use, especially in the dark. Unlike the hybrid, it has rubber on the bottom of its fold-out feet, which means it doesn't slide around every time you try and type on it, and it has a full set of arrow keys, which as a part-time developer myself is way more useful than having to press the FN key and then a weirdly aligned set of keys that I would have to learn extra or advanced rather than just having a damn set of arrow keys for a keyboard that's almost the exact same size. Now, like I said, most of that comes down to personal preference, and I understand that there will be a subset of people who like the layouts, like the Toper rubber dome switches, and apparently are willing to pay £260 for the privilege. But I can't imagine that that's a very large subset of people, and so it just makes me wonder who would actually go and buy one of these. Now with that said, I might be missing something, and I'm sure if I have, you've already let me know in the comments below. But if you haven't and you do think that this is something for you, I would definitely like to hear your thoughts down there, because I would like to understand who would actually buy this over something like the K2, which for all intents and purposes is a lot cheaper and seems to be more functional for a very similar size. Now if you'd like to check out the hybrid, I'm going to leave a link to their website in the description down below that you can check out and see pricing when you watch this, because it may have changed. I don't know. You can also, like I said, leave a comment and let me know what you think of the keyboard in the comments down below, especially if this is something that you would actively pick up. I would definitely like to hear what your thoughts on that is. Otherwise, there is also a whole load of other links in the description you can check out. There's stuff like merch or hoodies or t-shirts like this one. This is a pretty subtle striped design, but there's a load of other stuff you can check out too. There's also Patreon if you want to get cool rewards like ad-free videos and support me directly, or there's a load of other affiliate links, including from people like Overclockers UK, a few VPN options, and even Streamlabs OBS if you want to start streaming. You can also check out that subscribe button, like I said, for more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and there's plenty of other videos over there. Of course, I'm going to leave the Keychron K2 video that you can check out, but I've done a number of other keyboard reviews as well, including, like I said, that Expo ergonomic one, if you're interested. Otherwise, that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, but otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video.